If you've just found out that a partner's having an affair, you're probably feeling devastated and not really sure what to do next. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, but it might feel like it's not okay to share them with family and friends right now. So I put together some videos that might help explain what's going on, why it might have happened, what you might want to do next, and how to begin thinking about your future. You don't need to sign up or anything, the videos will just play. There's also a guide that I've created underneath this video if you want to take a look at it and refer back to it. My name is Debbi Carberry. I'm a relationship coach and therapist, and I'm here to help and support you. So what the heck is an affair? What is it, and what types of affairs do people actually have? In the past, as I said, it was in your local community with people who you probably knew or knew of, and now it is very different. So let's just start with some stats, because I'm all about having factual information, ladies, and keeping you well informed rather than just feeding you garbage. So let's start with some factual information. So studies globally suggest that around 30 to 40% of unmarried couples and 18 to 20% of married couples will have at least one incident of sexual infidelity during their relationship. So the rates of infidelity among women are thought to increase as women get older. They're higher in more recent marriages compared with marriages that have gone on for a very long time. About 40% of unmarried relationships and 25% of marriages see at least one incident. So that's globally. Statistics show that there is a growing impact on families. So these impacts can be quite devastating now, because the ability to have an affair and the ease with which affairs can happen is much greater than it has ever been in the history of our lives. For those of us who have had parents who have separated, we are more likely to experience affairs than those who haven't. And about 20% of men will have an affair, and about 13% of women. I do hear from women who have had an affair, and oftentimes the reasons for women having affairs are quite different to the reasons men have affairs. So there can be differences in why people have an affair. So let's have a look about what affair actually is, because there's a lot of ambiguity now with online things. So people are a bit confused. Is this an affair or not? Is it infidelity or not? So let's see what an affair is. Let's look at the various types of affairs. So an affair is really simple to define. It really is. It is a romantic, emotional, or sexual involvement with two people or more, typically with at least one of them in a committed relationship with somebody else. It involves secrecy, deception, and a betrayal of trust with the primary relationship. Affairs can really vary in intensity and in duration, and they can go from a one-night stand to a really long-term emotional or sexual relationship that is committed outside of the original partnership. Affairs often lead to so much emotional turmoil. Now, if any of you have had the experience of someone having an affair that you have been in a relationship with, or you have been the person who has had an affair, let me know in the comments, the emotional turmoil that comes with that, the breaking of trust, and how the whole relationship really shifts in dramatic ways, in really deeply emotionally wounding places. What we know is something like this, an abandonment or rejection of our primary partner. Our brain really finds that incredibly challenging to deal with. It's experienced in our bodies as if we have been physically wounded. So the impact of that is enormous. So let me know in the comments. You don't have to give me details, but just let me know in the comments if you've experienced somebody having an affair, whether it was you or somebody else. You don't have to say who it was. I know when women come to me, they are usually coming to me when they have discovered an affair, or they have had a gut feeling that an affair has happened, and they're really wanting help with the profound emotional consequences that come with that. So I want to talk to you about types of affair in this session, because I want you to understand what an affair is and what an affair is not. Sometimes when people have affairs, they will tell us that it's not an affair. We need to be mindful that we need to know what an affair is, and to be really clear and have the boundaries around what we believe to be an affair, and to be able to say to somebody, no, this is what an affair is to me. So it's really important that we have a clear understanding. So I'm going to run through some, and what I'd love you to do in the comments is let me know if you've experienced this, which type of affair has impacted you, if an affair has in fact impacted you. An emotional affair. Now, women will often have these, some men, but lots of women, when they have affairs, usually do it because they're emotional affairs. And an emotional affair is when one partner develops quite a deep and emotional connection with somebody outside of the primary relationship. There may not be any physical involvement at all, but emotional affairs can be just as intense and just as damaging. In fact, I would say sometimes more so. They involve emotional intimacy, support, and really strong romantic feelings. And some people think if it's not physical, it's not an affair. That's not true. An emotional affair for a partner can feel devastating. You know, they won't talk to me. They're not connected to me. They don't listen to me. But they're having all of that with somebody else. They're emotionally invested in this other person, and this other person meets their emotional needs. That can be devastating, and sometimes more so than a sexual affair for some people. So an emotional affair has no sexual involvement at all, but is very, very much an emotional, supportive, intimate relationship. A physical affair, which is what most of us are used to and most of us know and understand, and physical affairs are quite simple to define. They involve sexual activity with somebody outside of the primary relationship. There can be a one-night stand or an ongoing sexual relationship with somebody other than their committed partner. And of course, this is the one that most of us understand and know. In recent times, and when I say recent, the last 20 years, but more so probably in the last 3 years, cyber affairs have really, really skyrocketed. The last 3 years have been challenging for so many of us on so many levels, but a cyber affair has come about because the internet is accessible. You know, you pick up your phone and you have the internet with you. Cyber affairs have become incredibly prevalent. Affairs happen online, but they often they have a lot of exchange of intimate messages, photographs and videos. They're not necessarily any actual physical contact person to person, but the emotional and sexual involvement can be really significant and incredibly intense. And the reason for that can be because there are no barriers. Like online, you can say and do whatever you damn well please, things that you would never dream of doing in a face-to-face affair. And of course, the intensity of the number one, the accessibility of having it on your phone. But number two, some people can tell themselves, well, it's not technically an affair because I'm not meeting them. I don't know them. We're not connecting in that way. Therefore, it's not an affair. Ladies, I'm here to tell you it absolutely is an affair, and a cyber affair can have some pretty significant fallout. I have met with people who have partners who have been in cyber affairs, and the pain, excuse me, there's an airplane going over very loud, and the pain of those affairs can be gut-wrenching. Unlike affairs where you're meeting in person, a cyber affair has a footprint, a digital footprint. And what happens is that information can be found and can be gut-wrenchingly, emotionally devastating to the person who finds the images, the videos, and the messages. It can be gut-wrenching to try and manage the pain and the suffering that you might go through if you discover that an affair has happened and it's a cyber affair. So, sorry, I've got a bit of noise in the background. I hope you can't hear that. There's just a bit distraction and noisy here. Hopefully that will go in a second. All right, so a cyber affair has some added problems insofar as there can be an electronic footprint that can be found, and it's confronting in ways that a face-to-face affair would never ever happen. Cyber affairs have risen in popularity, especially since 2020, where people were not able to go out and meet other people face-to-face and could more easily get online and talk to people online. So that kind of affair can have some significant impacts, more so than some others. As I said, because of the visuals, you can see things, and those things, once seen, cannot be forgotten. They are devastating beyond measure. All right. Back to things that we know and have been around for a long time. So a one-night stand, of course. A one-night stand is a brief, spontaneous sexual encounter with somebody, usually without any emotional attachment or commitment. And this type of affair typically occurs, as a single event and doesn't involve any continuing relationships. I do know that in my experience that one-night stands, generally speaking, people do regret them. It's at a business party, or you've had too much to drink, or it's somebody you've kind of been connected to, but something happened, and in that one instance, there's been a sexual experience. Oftentimes, one-night stands are, from my experience, when people have come to me around them, are quite regretted, and people are like, oh my God, what did I just do? That was not a good idea at all. Of course, there is a serial affair. So this is where you may be in a relationship with somebody who has had more than one affair. And I have worked with women like this. My partner said they've had an affair. We tried to get over it. And then, a year or two later, they've had another affair, and we try and survive that. And then a year or two later, they've had another affair. Serial affairs are a pattern of engaging in multiple affairs over time, often with different partners, and different individuals are involved in the serial affairs. This history of infidelity is really, really challenging, and often comes along with somebody who is really struggling with long-term monogamous commitment, but it is devastating to the person on the receiving end. This kind of situation really needs strong boundaries attached to it. Otherwise, it will continue for the life of your relationship. Okay, so here's some affairs that we don't talk about very much, but I think are really important ones to cover. So we've covered some of the ones that most of you will probably know about, but I want to talk about some where your relationship may be in trouble, and because of that, an affair comes about. And these are the ones that relationships sometimes can overcome, sometimes, not always. So a conflict-driven affair. These affairs happen in response to unresolved conflict or dissatisfaction within the primary relationship, where individuals are actually seeking solace, they're trying to find some comfort, or they're seeking revenge by becoming involved with somebody else and using an affair as a way to cope with their unhappiness and their frustration. I see this sometimes when couples have been together for a while, they are trying to work through stuff, but it's becoming impossible. Maybe there's entrenched conflict that just isn't getting resolved at all, and they are getting pretty desperate, but they don't want to leave. And so this kind of affair can happen as a kind of band-aid on the relationship. It's not a good idea, and of course it does cause problems down the track. Another kind of affair we don't talk about is an exit affair. And this is when a person gets into an affair with somebody else as a way to signal the end of their primary relationship. So they know they're unhappy, they're quite dissatisfied, usually 18 months to 2 years prior to them actually exiting the affair, their relationship. They will get into some kind of relationship with somebody else as a way of preparing themselves to leave. Now, it's not conscious. They're not sitting there going, oh, I'm going to leave in 2 years' time, so what I'll do is I'll have an exit affair. It happens because they're preparing to leave. It's a way for someone to find a reason to leave a relationship by seeking emotional or sexual fulfillment outside of the original relationship before it officially ends. You find more men do the exit affairs than the women. Oftentimes, men, especially older men, like, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, men who've been in relationships for a long time who are not really certain about being alone, but may have issues and want to kind of move on because the grass is greener elsewhere. P.S. You do still have to mow the grass no matter where it is. But oftentimes, will want to have somebody in the wings before they move out of their primary relationship. This can be very painful if you're on the receiving end of it, because if you are trying to work on your relationship and you believe that you're both committed to that, but your partner is preparing to leave and hasn't really expressed that and has moved on already, it can be very devastating. Women will often say to me, I cannot believe how quickly they've moved on, or they're already living with somebody else. That's probably because they knew this person prior to the relationship ending. Okay, transactional affairs involve engaging in a relationship often a sexual one or a material one or financial one. These relationships are often motivated by personal benefit rather than emotional or romantic connections. Think, your average 60-year-old guy with a 20-year-old girl. They're transactional. There is a connection where one person is getting their needs met, and the other person also gets their needs met. One person's need may be a sexual one, while the other person's is more of a material one. So a transactional affair usually has that and not always, but oftentimes where one person is gaining maybe influence or money or status or something, and the other person is also gaining maybe a financial thing or a sexual thing or something like that. So it is more transactional than it is romantic. And finally, the revenge affair. These are really interesting affairs, really. Revenge affairs often happen when one partner discovers that their spouse has been unfaithful, and they decide they're going to retaliate by having an affair of their own. This is an attempt to really hurt the partner in the same way that they've been hurt. So it's an attempt to really take care of yourself. Unfortunately, when we do this, oftentimes it is not fulfilling, it doesn't feel good, it's against our values, and it doesn't help oftentimes to feel better. It just makes you go, right, well, see how you feel. But generally speaking, when I've talked to women, they also say they don't feel great about it. So those kind of affairs can be extraordinarily challenging. So today, we've talked a little bit about what an affair is and the types of affairs. This is important to know because if somebody's having an affair around you, or you have experienced it, or you're having one, knowing what it is helpful, because when you can label it, you can kind of have a conversation about it.